The July 22nd WikiLeaks DNC release. In the spring of 2016, the Trump campaign's opposition research team primarily focused on Clinton's missing emails and financial contributions to the Clinton Foundation. In April and May, the campaign's interest in the Clinton emails increased as the campaign became convinced that public interest in the emails could benefit Trump's chances to win. According to Rick Gates, Trump Jr. would ask where the Clinton emails were during, quote, family meetings, close quote, regularly scheduled meetings of senior Trump campaign officials and Trump family members. Other senior advisors, including Flynn, Kushner, Manafort, Lewandowski, then-Senator Jeff Sessions, and campaign policy advisor Sam Clovis, also expressed interest in obtaining the emails. Around the same time, in approximately May 2016, Roger Stone alerted Rick Gates and Paul Manafort that WikiLeaks would be releasing information about Clinton, but provided no details about the timing. Stone had known Trump for years and had served as an advisor to the Trump campaign from late 2014 until approximately August 2015. Although Stone no longer had a formal position on the campaign at this time, the campaign, quote, still had people he knew, close quote, including Trump, Gates, Paul Manafort, and later, Steve Bannon, and Stone, quote, had the ability to access these people, close quote. Stone stayed in close communication with the campaign. In April and May 2016, Stone and Gates had approximately 67 phone calls. During the same time period, Stone and Manafort spoke by phone approximately 64 times, and Stone also spoke 67 times with Trump donor Eric Prince. Manafort also recalled hearing from Stone sometime in June 2016 that a, quote, source close to WikiLeaks confirmed that WikiLeaks had the emails from Clinton's server, close quote. Like Gates, Manafort recalled Stone telling him that the emails would be released, quote, soon, close quote, but Stone, quote, did not know when, close quote. Manafort, who was not convinced that the documents were coming out, directed Gates to check in with Stone, quote, from time to time, close quote, to see if his WikiLeaks information remained, quote, real and viable, close quote. Although Manafort did not identify a precise date for his June conversation with Stone about WikiLeaks, phone records reflect 6 phone calls between the two during that month, including on June 4th, June 12th, June 20th, and June 23rd. According to Manafort's campaign calendar, Manafort and Stone were scheduled to meet in person at 12:30 p.m. on June 23rd in the Trump Tower cafeteria for 30 minutes. The committee received no further information about the purpose of the meeting. Nonetheless, phone records and calendar entries depict a pattern of communication involving Manafort, Gates, and Stone. Phone records for June and July reflect a total of 28 calls between Gates and Stone and a total of 18 between Manafort and Stone, including those described below. From early June to the July 22nd WikiLeaks release, Manafort and Gates both called to ask Stone when the release would happen, and Stone repeated that the information was coming. In one call during that period, Stone also told Gates that the WikiLeaks information could be from the Russians. However, Gates did not recall Stone suggesting a connection between WikiLeaks and Russia. Gates also thought that Stone could have based his theory of Russian involvement on publicly available information. According to Gates, Stone was the only person conveying this information to the campaign at the time, and he did so before WikiLeaks began publicizing its access to Clinton documents on June 12th. On June 12th, Julian Assange gave an interview in which he said that WikiLeaks was planning to release information on Hillary Clinton. The Trump campaign was elated by the news about WikiLeaks' plans, which it considered an unexpected, quote, gift, close quote. Gates said that the campaign believed the comment had to do with missing Clinton emails, and Manafort said that Stone got, quote, half credit, close quote, because Stone's prediction had been corroborated. However, some in the campaign were uncertain that WikiLeaks had these materials because Stone had been making representations about WikiLeaks, quote, for so long, close quote, and there was no other evidence of the emails being released. The day after Assange's announcement, Stone emailed Gates to schedule a call for, quote, guidance on many things, close quote. They spoke that evening for 20 minutes. Gates said that one of the issues Stone needed, quote, guidance, close quote, on was WikiLeaks. He did not say exactly what guidance he provided. On June 14, 2016, only 2 days after Assange's interview, the DNC announced that it had been compromised by Russian government hackers. That evening at 9:03 p.m., Stone called Trump at Trump's home number. Trump returned Stone's call from his cell phone 2 times, at 9:53 p.m. and 9:56 p.m. The calls lasted about 2.5 minutes and 2 minutes, respectively. The committee does not know the substance of these conversations, but the pattern and timing of Stone's calls with Trump and others during this period suggests that the two could have discussed the DNC hack and WikiLeaks. Campaign leadership reacted positively to the news that the DNC had been hacked by the Russians. Gates described their reaction in part as, quote, disbelief, close quote, but also given, quote, what we were told that information might be about, close quote. The campaign, quote, felt it would give them a leg up, close quote, if released. In response to the Assange announcement, Stone's information and, presumably, the news of the DNC hack, the campaign planned a, quote, press strategy, a communications campaign, and messaging based on the possibility the emails existed, close quote. And conversations were held, quote, about what the campaign could plan for in the way of emails, close quote. Before WikiLeaks had released any materials, Trump was reportedly frustrated that the Clinton emails had not been found. Michael Cohen, Trump's personal attorney and longtime confidant, recalled Trump commenting, quote, I wonder where they are. Somebody's got to have them, close quote. Cohen described Trump as, quote, obsessed, the same way he was obsessed with finding Barack Obama's birth certificate, close quote. Just after midnight on June 16th, Stone and Gates discussed the DNC hack by phone. Hours earlier on June 15th, the GRU had released for the first time, through the Guccifer 2.0 persona, documents stolen from the DNC as described above. During the over 30-minute call, Stone told Gates that, quote, more information would be coming out of the DNC hack, close quote. Stone then requested contact information from Gates for Jared Kushner in order to, quote, brief, close quote, Kushner on WikiLeaks documents. Gates then sent Kushner's contact information to Stone. Kushner told the committee, quote, I've only met Roger Stone once in my life, and I shook his hand briefly during the transition, and I never met him before that, close quote. Because Manafort was initially dubious that Stone had accurate information about WikiLeaks, he instructed Stone, quote, not to tell Trump until they could confirm it, close quote. Manafort said that he wanted to keep Trump focused on speeches and meeting members of Congress, not distracted, quote, by the titillation of a WikiLeaks release, close quote. But while Manafort claimed that he was reluctant to tell Trump and cautioned Stone against doing so, Stone could and did contact Trump directly, as Stone did on June 14th. In addition, Manafort believed Stone would have told Trump anyway because, quote, he wanted the credit for knowing in advance, close quote. Witness testimony and documentary evidence support that Stone spoke to Trump about the WikiLeaks information prior to its release. Gates was aware that Stone called Trump during the campaign. Cohen similarly noted that, quote, Stone called Trump all the time, close quote, and, quote, could call Trump's cell phone, especially if at night, close quote. Trump himself acknowledged that he, quote, spoke by telephone with Roger Stone from time to time during the campaign, close quote. Though the records obtained by the committee are limited, they show numerous phone calls throughout June and July between Trump and Stone. In addition to the June 14th phone call, Stone received brief calls from a Trump Organization number on June 21st and 28th, although these calls did not appear to connect. Shortly after the June 28th call, Stone called Michael Cohen for 9 minutes. On June 30th, another day that Guccifer 2.0 posted commentary online, Stone called Rona Graff's line at the Trump Organization for 8 minutes. Later that same day, he traded missed calls with Trump at various numbers, culminating in a 4-minute call from Stone to Trump's direct line. Any of these calls would have provided Stone with an opportunity to share additional information about WikiLeaks directly with Trump, and given the content of his conversations with Manafort and Gates, combined with Trump's known interest in the issue, the committee assesses he likely did. Still, some senior campaign officials the committee interviewed claimed to have no knowledge of these communications. and the campaign sought to distance itself publicly from Stone. For instance, Jared Kushner said he, quote, never saw Trump speak with Stone, close quote, and, quote, never saw Stone around at anything, close quote. So he did not think, quote, there was too much involvement in the campaign in any way, close quote. Others appeared to minimize Stone's influence. Bannon, who joined the campaign later on, insisted that Stone had, quote, no engagement, close quote, with the campaign, while Bannon was involved, and that he was not aware of any communications between Stone and Trump during that time. However, phone records reflect at least 3 calls between Stone and Bannon after Bannon had joined the campaign, suggesting Bannon himself was later in contact with Stone about campaign issues. In addition to working with Stone, in late June, the Trump campaign was searching for, quote, noteworthy, close quote, DNC documents that had been posted by the GRU under the Guccifer 2.0 persona. At that time, WikiLeaks had not released any hacked DNC documents. Nonetheless, an internal campaign email regarding use of the mid-June DNC document releases by Guccifer 2.0 foreshadowed the campaign's approach to WikiLeaks. Before downloading the newest batch of Guccifer 2.0 emails and, quote, sending them to the team, close quote, a campaign staffer asked, quote, if Senate or campaign rules preclude us from possessing data that's been hacked from a third party and distributed via the internet, close quote. John Mashburn, the policy director for the Trump campaign, replied, quote, I don't see a problem, just like WikiLeaks material, close quote. Nonetheless, a possible WikiLeaks release appeared central to the campaign's strategic focus. For example, after the June 12th announcement by Assange, Gates described learning from Manafort that the RNC was, quote, energized, close quote, by the potential of a WikiLeaks release. Further, Manafort told Gates that the RNC was going to, quote, run the WikiLeaks issue to ground, close quote. Trump and Kushner were reportedly willing to, quote, cooperate, close quote, with the RNC's efforts on this front, overcoming their earlier skepticism of working with the RNC and demonstrating that both were focused on the possibility of WikiLeaks releasing Clinton documents. Witness testimony indicates that Stone may have raised WikiLeaks again to Trump in late July, shortly before the DNC release occurred. Although Manafort did not know whether Stone and Trump spoke about WikiLeaks that week, he assumed they did. Michael Cohen recalled overhearing a phone call from Stone in Trump's office on what he believed was the 18th or 19th of July. As recalled by Cohen, quote, I was sitting in Mr. Trump's office when Rona Graff yelled out, Mr. Trump, Roger Stone on line 1, and as the way Mr. Trump's habit is, he doesn't use the handset of the phone. He uses a little black box, a speaker box that he maintains on his desk. And without telling Roger Stone that I was in the office, Mr. Trump hit the power button, and Roger Stone responded. Mr. Trump, he said. Roger, how are you? He says. Good. Just wanted to let you know I got off the telephone a moment ago with Julian Assange. And in a couple of days, there's going to be a massive dump of emails that's going to be extremely damaging to the Clinton campaign. Mr. Trump said, that's good. Keep me posted. To which point, after they hung up, Mr. Trump looked at me and he said to me, do you believe him? Do you think Roger really spoke to Assange? And I responded, I don't know. Roger is Roger. And for all you know, he was looking on his Twitter account. I don't know the answer. Close quote. The limited records reviewed by the committee did not reflect a call from Stone's known cell phone to a Trump-associated number on either of those days, which conflicts with Cohen's testimony. However, the committee cannot rule out the possibility that either Stone or Trump used alternative numbers. The committee did not obtain the phone records for Stone's residences in Florida or New York, or records reflecting the transmission or receipt of text messages. In addition, the committee did not seek to obtain the phone records for Trump's cell phone, which Stone could sometimes call. However, Stone's phone records showed that Keith Schiller placed a 5-minute call to Stone on the afternoon of July 17, 2016. Witnesses said that Trump often used Schiller's phone to hide his communications. For example, Sam Nunberg recalled Stone commenting in the late 2015 to early 2016 timeframe that Trump would call Stone from Keith Schiller's phone because he did not want his advisors to know they were talking. In June and July 2016, prior to the release of DNC materials by WikiLeaks, the campaign worked on a, quote, messaging strategy, close quote, based on, quote, the possible content of an upcoming release, close quote. Gates described the effort as, quote, brainstorming sessions, close quote, to determine what the campaign would say if materials, including the 33,000 missing Clinton emails, were released. Manafort was involved in creating this strategy, as were Gates, Stephen Miller, and Jason Miller. Among other things, the strategy included a focus on Clinton's perceived low level of trustworthiness and her emails. On July 22, 2016, WikiLeaks released and publicized 20,000 emails the GRU had stolen from the DNC. After the July 22 release, Trump and his campaign immediately pivoted to leveraging the WikiLeaks documents. Gates recalled that Manafort, quote, expressed excitement, close quote, about the release. On the afternoon of July 22nd, Manafort and Trump discussed how they could use the DNC emails relating to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Although Manafort was confused by Stone's prediction, which was that WikiLeaks had emails from, quote, Clinton's server, close quote, whereas the document released that day came from the DNC, he still used the, quote, fact of the hack and the substance of the emails, close quote, to attack Clinton and deflect attention from Trump's comments towards Senator Ted Cruz and Cruz's wife. Cohen and Trump also discussed, quote, the usefulness of the released emails, close quote, including in relation to Bernie Sanders, Donna Brazile, and Wasserman Schultz. Gates recalled that following the email release, he was with Trump on Trump's plane on the tarmac, and takeoff was delayed for 30 minutes so that Trump could work the emails into his next speech. According to Michael Cohen, after the DNC release, Trump confided to him, quote, I guess Roger was right, close quote. Cohen also said that Trump told him, quote, he guessed Stone knew what he was talking about, close quote. Similarly, despite Manafort's initial skepticism, after the email release on July 22nd, Manafort, quote, thought that Stone had been right, close quote. The committee did not identify who, if anyone, was Roger Stone's source of information in advance of the July 22nd WikiLeaks release. On July 23rd, the campaign used the release to attack the Democratic Party, saying that the, quote, anti-Bernie DNC email leak issue threatens to destroy their party, close quote. Trump also highlighted the release in a July 23rd tweet, quote, the WikiLeaks email release today was so bad to Sanders that it will make it impossible for him to support her, unless he is a fraud, close quote. On July 25th, Trump's talking points highlighted the WikiLeaks materials, including, quote, the rigging of the system, close quote, and emphasizing the division between Clinton and Sanders supporters. These attacks mirrored the discussion between WikiLeaks and Guccifer 2.0 about using the emails to create conflict within the Democratic Party by splitting Clinton and Sanders supporters, discussed Supra. They also echoed social media efforts by Russia to drive a wedge between supporters of Clinton and Sanders, as described in Volume 2. At a news conference on July 27th, Trump also declared, quote, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you'll be able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press, close quote. Senior campaign officials believed that the statement was unscripted. However, Gates also recalled Stone mentioning that Russia was probably the source of the materials, and Gates also acknowledged there were public indications at the time that Russia was responsible. Within 5 hours of Trump's statement, GRU hackers spearphished non-public email accounts of Clinton's personal office for the first time and targeted 76 email accounts hosted by the Clinton campaign's domain.